Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on the Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. October 24th, you've got a municipal election coming up, and so I want to, over the course of the next month and a bit, is introduce you to a couple different candidates for ward council races, mayor's races, etc. in Peel Region, Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, etc. And I think this is important because not a lot of you go out and vote in municipal elections, and I want to try to motivate you to take some time, pay attention to the local candidate, give some thought to the policies, the individuals that are running, and hopefully exercise your franchise and vote for the person that you think can best represent you on City Council. And tonight I want to introduce you to a candidate in Ward 1. Deborah Goss is her name. She's been involved in the community for a long time, because I've seen you at community meetings over and over and over again over the years. Why did you decide, after such a long involvement in the community, to actually put your name forward to run for councillor in Ward 1?
Well, being passionate about my community and having spent 31 years in the community and the last 5 years working so hard on all the new development coming, it seemed only appropriate that I should try and see it through the next 4 years, which are going to be integral to what happens. It's crucial what happens over the next 4 years.
Why is it crucial?
It's crucial because we don't have the infrastructure in place, especially along the Lakeshore corridor, for what's coming. And I don't see any plans for what's going to come in the short term and what we're going to be having in the neighbourhood. So, for example, Brightwater will start seeing their first people in 18 months' time. Lakeview will start seeing
that. So Brightwater is a 75-acre site at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore, the southwest corner of Mississauga Road and Lakeshore. It's going to have, what, 10,000 people?
It'll have 4,000, up to 4,000 units. So it's going to be about, if you count right, yes, 10,000 people.
10,000 people. And at the same time, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's no widening improvements to Lakeshore Road, to Huron, Ontario, or to Mississauga Road?
No, that's correct.
And then the Lakeview development, which is what, south of, Cawthra, Dixie, and south of Lakeshore, is what, 120, 140 acres?
So it's 177 acres. It's a little bit further east than that. It has 8,050 units, so that's going to be
15 to 20,000.
Yes.
And again, any improvements in transit?
No, none. BRT is planned, but I call it the BRT to nowhere, from nowhere. So it's 3 stops at East Avenue and ending before it gets to Long Branch. And that's been put in place, obviously, for the density numbers. But it's kind of unusual to see that we're going to be looking at high-value units down by the water, which is a kilometre away from the Lakeshore Road, that those people will walk up and take a bus.
They're not going to walk a kilometre?
It's not going to happen.
Not a chance?
No.
So tell me, how can you have, and your ward is, what, about 40, 50,000 people now?
I think Lakeview is 26,000, so yeah, about
26,000
for Lakeview alone. So that's going to double our population.
Okay, but the ward is probably 40 or 50. The ward is probably 40 or 50, and you're going to get another 10,000 in Brightwaters, and another 15 to 20,000 in Lakeview.
Yes.
So you're going to be almost doubling your size.
We will be doubling our size.
And that's not counting what's going on in Port Credit.
No, and that doesn't count any of the other small developments that are coming along. So because all the density was planned on the south side of Lakeshore, what has happened is new developers have come along the north side and said, okay, well, we'll take advantage of that. So we're seeing new developments popped in here, there, and everywhere. That was never expected. There was supposed to be a gentle transition into our northern neighborhoods, and all the density was supposed to happen on the south side. So on top of what we have coming with the new developments, the 2 new developments, we're also going to see much more people coming on the north side. And we have to remember, there is only one way out of the south of the Lakeshore. There is a lake there. So you can only get out onto Lakeshore and on the north side, and we only have 3 exits.
So what's going to happen?
That's Highway 10, Cawthra, and Dixie.
What's going to happen?
Everybody's going to be pouring onto the Lakeshore.
Mississauga Road, too.
And Mississauga Road, yes.
So what's going to happen?
So the issue is that we don't see that this has been well thought through from a potential of people getting along the Lakeshore corridor. One of the things that we've discussed is how can we move people, how can we be innovative in what we do? How can we think differently? We've been promised this pedestrian-friendly public realm, mixed-use developments, and seeing that come into action is one of the things that we're not sure about how it's going to come to be. So one of the things that I've been talking about is the fact that we already have a Lakeshore Road that has infrastructure with buses that come all the way from Clarkson to the Etobicoke border. How do we capitalize on that? We know that right now people don't get on buses too often unless there are some people that move north-south getting to work. But we know that the north-south connections are not very well done. In Carthra, for example, you can't get all the way down to Lakeshore. So one of the things that I've discussed is maybe having something innovative like smaller buses that come more frequently, every 5 minutes. And that we have something that's more environmentally friendly, and we take the 55 million that's going into the BRT and we put that into something that we can actually look at happening in the next 5 years, because the BRT right now, who knows when that's going to happen.
So, let me give you an example if I could. The Mr. Christie site at Park Lawn and the QEW in Etobicoke in Toronto, they're getting a GO train station, and it's 25,000 people. It's 25 acres, so it's 1/4 the size of Lakeview. They're predicting 25,000 people, and so therefore it's got to have, obviously, I guess, a lot more density. And it's just, proximate to that whole Humber Bay Shores development. But they're actually getting a GO train station because they said there's no way that they could actually take that density without a GO train station.
Yes.
And that GO train station is going to be, 2 stations from Union Station. It's going to be a spectacular station. That's the kind of development that you need, the kind of infrastructure you need. Because I think about the 20,000 people in Lakeview and the 10,000 people in Mississauga Road and Lakeshore. Mississauga Road, Lakeshore, here, Ontario, Carthra.
You're not going to be able to get out.
Are going to be disastrous.
And I know we've always talked about live, work, play area. I mean, that's something that we hope to see. And we know we're going to see 9,000 people with the innovation area. But the thing is that's not going to supply all the work that's needed for all those people with doubling the density. So there are going to be people that have to travel up the corridor. So how can we get people out of their cars more often? It's not going to be completely, but how can we reduce, even if it's 25% of the time, taking a bus? So taking a bus up to Long Branch or into Port Credit.
But you told me that the buses and the BRT stops before Long Branch.
If we use the BRT.
That's crazy. Why would it stop before Long Branch?
Because it's in Mississauga and Long Branch is in Toronto.
But the BRT all the buses on Dundas go to Kipling.
That's correct. But
why wouldn't they go to Long Branch? You want to get people to that Long Branch GO train station.
That's right, but that's not the plan right now. It is 3 bus stops. That's all we're looking at.
So you're going to have people that want to go downtown to take the bus back to Port Credit, or to the Hurontario LRT.
So the way that
it's never going to happen.
It'll be a regular bus that will move in to the BRT and then move back out of it again. And I don't see how that's going to. We don't see how that's going to help.
So when you talk to people about this, what do you say you're going to do differently than the current councillor?
So one of them is the 5-minute bus service. Encouraging people that we are an innovative area. We have to think differently. We have to stop thinking of Lakeshore Road, the Lakeshore Corridor, as being Highway 2. That was Highway 2 a long time ago. It can't be that anymore with everything that we have coming. With all that we have promised.
Well, I take a look at Oakville, and it was under construction for a long time. But have you been in downtown Oakville recently?
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
Like the big, broad, interlocking brick sidewalks and the EV power generating stations. But it's only 2 lanes.
Yes. And it works,
Port Credit would be spectacular if it was only 2 lanes. But there's no way you can do that with this kind of development. There's no way you could develop.
And that's why we have to completely relook at the Main Street. And it'll be the Main Street not only in Port Credit, but all the way through. How are we going to work with that Main Street? We don't feel that that's been looked at. That innovation has not yet come. That thought process has not come.
Why?
Because policies in Mississauga try and put a square peg in a round hole.
But how could these developments at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore and then at Lakeview get approved with no transit, no infrastructure, no road improvements?
That's because we deal in silos. It's one of the things that the Lakeview Community Advisory Panel said right from the beginning. This needed a holistic approach. This wasn't looked at as developing the whole of the lakeshore. It was looked at individual developments, and that's unfortunately what happens in Mississauga, and it's part of the province's fault, is that we look at every development as a single entity. So we don't compare it to the next one. I know people right now that have 3 developments happening within 2 minutes of them, and each one has been looked at individually and not how they affect their street. So you can imagine the frustration of people knowing that, and knowing that it's going to affect them, knowing that there's 3 developments coming to your area within the next 2 to 3 years, and knowing how much it's going to ruin the small street that you have, the parking, the extra traffic coming out.
Well, the parking, I got to tell you, one of my biggest pet peeves is I drive down to your part of town, and I see these signs all over the place, you know, parking tickets doubled and tripled during the summertime. And I go like, this is everyone's waterfront. How can you possibly want to double and triple my parking tickets in the summertime to keep me away? Why don't you actually build some more parking spots or a better bus system so people from not the privileged people that live right near the lake can actually get to the lake, to enjoy the lake?
It should be a waterfront for everyone.
But it's not.
And so how do we think about that differently? We have Carter School, for example, that sits empty for the whole of summer. Why are we not talking to the school board and saying, okay, let's have some new idea where we make it, it doesn't even have to be a shuttle bus. We can make it an area to park your car, get your bikes off and ride them down to the lakeshore. We put a water station there. We have some students helping there. We help people cross the lakeshore road so that it's safe. There's all kinds of innovative ideas that we can think about this. It doesn't take much.
I think you got some really big issues in Ward 1.
We do. We do.
We're chatting tonight with a candidate for Ward 1 in Mississauga City Council. The election is on October 24th. Her name is Deborah Goss. Do you have a website?
I do. It's electdgoss.ca.
Electdgoss .ca. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Deborah Goss, Ward 1 council candidate, who's got some interesting challenges in the south end of Mississauga and some interesting ideas. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. We're having a spirited conversation tonight about Ward 1, which is the south end of Mississauga, with Deborah Goss, who is a candidate for council, city council in Ward 1. And she's been very involved in the Lakeview Ratepayers Association and some of the developments in South Mississauga for a long period of time. And she's decided to put her name forward for council, and I guess primarily because of all these developments that we've been just talking about. Let me ask you a couple of other questions, since you know, we've obviously got some other issues. Port Credit, you know, has got some development. There was some big development proposals at the GO train station and just west of here, Ontario, etc. But it seems to have worked. And it makes a bit more sense, frankly, a lot more sense, I would have thought, because it's proximate to the GO train station. So people aren't going to use cars. They're going to walk to the GO train and take that GO train downtown. And Port Credit, you know, when I moved here, Port Credit wasn't a great strip. Port Credit today is a great strip, great restaurants, great bars, live entertainment, some of the best live entertainment in all of Toronto. An incredible ice cream store that I like to go to way too often, as you could probably tell. Like, what is it that we're doing right in Port Credit that we should be thinking about duplicating?
So Port Credit has it has 3 major transit hubs. I mean, it has the GO station, it has a bus terminal, and it's going to have the LRT terminal as well. So obviously, from a development perspective, there's going to be a lot more development coming. I mean, they already have 2 buildings put forward for a 40 and a 42-story right on the, I think it's on the car park of the GO station. Another 22-story coming, and there's other developments around, and then there's the Brightwater. And then we haven't even discussed the Marina Lands, which is under its environmental assessment right now, but will be coming down the pipeline at some point, and people are really hoping for that too. It's fabulous, it's wonderful, and people are pouring down into Port Credit, and when the LRT is open, I'm sure they'll be pouring even more. But that density that's coming needs to be spread around. It needs to be spread among other areas in the waterfront. How do we move people from the foot of it, from Port Credit and along the Lakeshore corridor? How can we bring them out into the areas of Lakeview which is also seeing the density numbers coming a great on as well, and are planning for that density.
Have you been to Humber Bay Shores?
I have, yes.
You know, I think that was done really well. A huge amount of density on the north side of, what's it called, Marina Parade or something like that. But they kept a lot of city land, parkland, right on the waterfront. So it's not like Harbourfront, where you can say that it's got a concrete jungle separating you from the park, from the lake. It is a concrete jungle north of the drag, but south it's got beautiful broad sidewalks, bike paths, gardens, and the lake. We don't have that in Port Credit because it's separated from the lake.
So, as controversially, the one thing that people said is they didn't want another Humber Bay Shores. They didn't like it. They felt that it was too dense. It didn't have the retail spaces. It didn't have that pizzazz that everybody's looking for with their pedestrian realm and their transit orientated and all the things, the human scale spaces. And that's what was expected in both Lakeview and Port Credit with the Brightwater sites. That's not what people want to see, but we do know that the developments were supposed to be contained in the south side of Lakeshore, and that was what was supposed to work, and using that waterfront, which is not a huge volume of parkland.
It's not.
It isn't, no. It's a strip, you know, in both cases, and that's why we have to ensure that that is done right, because the dollars that are needed to put into that waterfront.
I'd hate to live in those townhouses at the bottom of here, Ontario, because like there's thousands of people that walk by your home all the time.
And yes, it's a very narrow strip of land where people have chosen to live there. They have had terrible parking problems and traffic problems. But the thing is trying to get people out of the car and into the transit.
But you're not going to get out of the car if it's a kilometre to a bus and it's several kilometres to a GO train station. And I apologize, if you were down at the bottom of Mississauga Road and at the lake in the Brightwater development,
yes,
you're not going to walk to the GO train station.
No, and I don't know.
And there's no bus that's going to take you to the GO train station.
That's right.
You're going to be driving.
And there may be some innovation that's offered there for a smaller shuttle that goes between the lakeshore. But down in Lakeview, for example, there was supposed to be a loop that went all the way through it, and you were supposed to be no more than 5 minutes away from a stop. Now, how that's going to work, we haven't seen yet. And again, it's something that's up in the air that hasn't really been finalized. So how does that manage with a more frequent bus service? There is no space to put in another GO station along the corridor.
Why not?
There has been discussion about putting something in Ogden, but that would mean that you'd have to basically expropriate land. And there's a much more rational idea of putting a faster bus service down the Lakeshore Road.
So I, with respect, I disagree with you. I think that number one, Ogden or Cawthra would be a great site for a GO train station, and or, as you undoubtedly know better than I because you are an expert on this, there's a spur line that goes from the GO train tracks all the way down to Lakeview because it actually took coal to the old coal generating station. So, and that right-of-way still exists, and you could have a actual line that goes up and joins in with the Long Branch GO.
And there was a time many years ago that they could have done something at Carter, but that time has passed. It's gone. It's out the window. And so to expropriate people.
What about my idea about the spur line?
The spur line, I don't see how that can work. The land you're, I think, talking about is the Hydro One land. Is that with the towers?
No, it goes right to Lakeview, and it goes straight up to the GO train line, and then it goes on to Long Branch. You can have a little shuttle there.
I don't think that's going to work. I don't think you're going to find that there's enough space to do that.
There's the space, there's the rail line. The challenge is no one's got the guts to actually do it.
Well, I'll certainly take a look at that. I mean, that's what I mean, is there needs to be further discussion. I mean, we have all kinds of ideas that we have in the community, and we're a community that came up with this plan
let me ask you about
for the density in 2000.
Let me ask you about the Huron Ontario LRT. That's going to be a huge construction issue in Ward 1 for a long time. What are your residents saying about that?
Actually, the residents are finding it very difficult. I mean, the noise and the dust and everything else. In fact, I believe Metrolinx has been door to door and heard that themselves, so I don't think that's any big secret. That will be coming in 2025, and I think they'll be on track for it. It'll be interesting to see the use of it, because it goes all the way to just below Brampton. It doesn't go into the city centre. Right. And for the people of Port Credit, they're
It's the number one issue in the Brampton election right now, people talking about potential extensions.
That's right. So for the people of Port Credit going further north, they're scratching their heads a little bit. But I think what will happen, and I've seen happen, I used to actually work up at Matheson Highway 10 area.
So it would have been good for you.
You're seeing a lot more businesses and further north from there, a lot of new construction, and new businesses, new commercial spaces are being built. So it could be down the line when it's in place, and it's only a couple of years away, let's face it,
yeah, I think
that we start to see something a bit more interesting. People might start to see the value of having work that's straight up the up the LRT
I don't think
line.
there's a lot of demand for it now. I think the demand's going to be going from square one to either the Cooksville Go or the Port Credit Go, which means the Port Credit Go is going to be even more overcrowded than it is today, and back up. But I can't see a lot of people like today. If you worked at Matheson or the 401 and here in Ontario, you wouldn't be living in Port Credit. You would be living in the top end of Ward 10 or Ward 9 or something like that, or Ward 7. So I don't think you'd be down. You know, the people primarily in Ward 1, I think, work downtown, and they're taking the Go
That's
downtown
correct.
or the Gardner downtown.
I took the Go train for 10 years, and yes, it's the easiest thing to do.
Let me ask you about Dixie and Dundas. So the top end of your ward is Dundas on the east, and Dixie and Dundas is a unbelievable opportunity, isn't it? And you know, you think about 6 Points in Etobicoke, that's going to have huge density because it's right by a GO train station and a subway station. You think about the Vaughan Metro Center, same thing. But all they're proposing is 12 stories at Dixie and Dundas.
So there's been a lot of study with the Dundas Connects and across there and through, and that's just finishing up. In fact, I think had an email tonight that showed me that it's coming to the end of its study. It's been an interesting process. Obviously, they've got a BRT that's continued through Dundas. The connection wasn't made, obviously, with Kipling when it was supposed to be at the time. There is some places where they do have higher heights and density. And I know that some of the businesses that are in that area are also pushing back. They'd like to see more. And I think I've been following it, but not very closely.
Yeah, I think the density should be there.
I think that you've got a certain amount that will come eventually. For example, there's places around the sort of Walmart, the GO station around that area that are just businesses right now. Yeah. There's no other residences to compete with.
Right.
So yes, it does make sense.
Makes a lot more sense. You got the GO train there. You got
That's
a BRT
correct.
there. You're
yes.
Short, a little jaunt to the Kipling subway station or the Kipling GO. I think that makes a lot more sense.
And
I think it makes a lot more sense than putting 20,000 people south of Lakeshore
with no exit,
with no transit, no
exit on the south side.
The door's open. I give you 1 minute. Make your pitch. Why should I vote for you?
Yes, my name's Deborah Goss. I've been lived in the community, home to home in the community for 31 years. We've raised 4 boys here. Been very involved in the community for 12 years. In the last 5 years, very involved in the development and what we have coming. I'm very concerned about the next 4 years. We need strong, decisive leadership for what's coming. We need things done very quickly and in place so that we're prepared for all the density that's coming down the pipeline. And I'd like to be your next councillor that can be part of the change that's coming to council. We know that there's quite a few a number of councillors that are changing, and I'd like to be part of that change as we move forward in that next stage of Ward 1.
Deborah Goss, thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, that's another one of the candidates that's running in the upcoming municipal elections. October 24th is the date. Deborah has been very involved in community affairs. I was, as some of you know, chairman of the Mississauga City Summit. She was very involved at that time. I've been very involved in an organization called Transit Alliance. And so I firmly believe in density around transit stations, which I think is not what we're actually doing in Mississauga with these 2 developments. I actually support and think some of the developments around Port Credit close to the GO train station make a ton of sense because people aren't going to need cars, just like around the major transit stations in Toronto, where they're actually now, the city is taking away parking requirements, saying we don't want you to build parking because we want to discourage people to have cars. That makes sense. That's got to be, if we're going to have affordable housing in Mississauga and Toronto, that's got to be the solution. And I think that the Brightwater development, the Lakeview development, and the access to the water and all that kind of stuff is spectacular. But I don't know what's going to happen in Mississauga Road, Lakeshore, Huron, Ontario, Cawthra, and Dixie. They're going to be disasters, and it's because we haven't got new transit. We haven't got new roads. We haven't figured out how we're going to get these people to their jobs. So I think that, Deborah, whether it's you or somebody else, I think you got your work cut out for you big time, because it's going to be a traffic nightmare in Ward 1. You heard it here first. Thanks for joining us on the Brian Crombie Show on Canada 1. Good night, everybody.